11 Alive News starts now.
It is 10 a.m. on this Thursday, January 15th. Nice to be with you here on 11 Alive Plus. We are with you streaming for the next hour and shaping up to be a busy hour. In just 1 hour from now, Governor Brian Kemp delivering his final State of the State address. We're going to be previewing that in just moments with our political reporter, Zach Merchant. And we've got a packed house here in the studio today. We got Reams and Gabby helping us punch up some shots and follow some breaking news as it happens here locally and nationwide. And I'm joined by meteorologist Melissa Nord here in the streaming center with us. Wow, what a chilly morning. And some folks were treated with some snowflakes last night.
You got your sweater vest on.
You got to have it when it's 20-something.
I wore my very warm sweater, snowflakey type of dress as well.
I can see it, yes. They're the flakes.
It's got glitter. I'm Elsa.
Nice.
My daughters think I'm Elsa like this. Yeah, we had a little bit of snow last night.
How about it?
Not in the metro. We never said it would be in the metro, but look at these videos from Hogpen Gap along the Richard Russell Scenic Highway last night. Angelina Salcedo was out there also. Those frozen ice crystals. So a few little bursts of snow made some excitement as Arctic Blast #1 rolled into North Georgia. Now, there were a couple of counties that had either virtual school today or they had a couple 2-hour delays because we were worried about some black ice formation. But as a whole, this is just the beginning of this wintry week for us.
What do you mean just the beginning? Are we talking about something more this weekend?
Well, we're talking about a lot of cold, Dan.
Okay.
And then there could be, for some of us, some winter weather as well. Who will definitely see the winter weather? That's the mountains again. The metro is still a huge question mark. So I want to talk about that. First, big picture, it is cold out there. We had wind chills in the single digits and teens this morning. They will stay in the 20s for the afternoon. More of that cold is coming in over the weekend, Saturday into Sunday. And when we see that cold setting in, we have to watch out for moisture very carefully. So we're watching Sunday as the models adjust hour by hour as to what may come. Now, here's the European model. I'm going to show you a big picture, 2 different weather systems I'm tracking over the weekend. The first of which comes in with our second Arctic cold front. That'll arrive Friday night through Saturday morning. You can see there we've got some green on the map for Metro Atlanta, but a little mixing in the mountains. So that'll be a possibility. And then as we head into Sunday time frame, along the tail end of that front, we're going to see another low that tries to develop, and that's going to crank up as it heads up to the East Coast. But the question's going to be, where's the moisture? How far to the coast is that low, or how far away from the coast is that low going to end up being? This is the European model pinpointing some wintry weather along the eastern coastline from the Carolinas down through southeastern Georgia. So that model has all the moisture staying east of us. Here's a different snapshot of one run of the American model. Again, we look at ensemble runs, which are looking at little tiny changes in the atmosphere where that wintry weather may end up being. We look at AI models. We look at high resolution models. This is just one operational model. So take this with a grain of salt, a very small grain of salt or a very large grain of salt, the way you spin it. But it does have that moisture a little further to the north and west. So what that tells us is this is a system we're watching. At this point, we know that there's going to be some kind of system forming off the coast likely over the weekend. We definitely see on Saturday morning some light rain coming in with some of those flakes mixing in the higher elevations. And then for Sunday, we still don't know a lot. So we don't know if a storm will definitely form. We think it will at this point. We've seen a lot of model consistency the last 2 to 3 runs now showing this little system forming by Sunday. But where's that system going to be? Where's the moisture going to be? How much moisture will we get? And then ultimately, what would the impacts be here in North Georgia? But the timeline of that would be on Sunday. So we're watching that for Sunday. Meanwhile, Saturday, some early rain showers in Atlanta. We're still going to make it to the 40s in some way, shape, or form on Saturday. Then the cold air blows in and it really drops, I think, by the ending of Saturday. Sunday will be another one of those days like today that we're not going to get out of the 30s. Now, today, very cold. 30s. My camera's not wanting to work, and that's okay.
It's frozen.
It is frozen.
Yeah.
Do you want to build us? I can't sing on this, right? I'll get in trouble. I don't have the rights to the song. So it's cold outside. I was taking my kids to school this morning, and the wind just cuts through you.
Yeah.
It's brutal out there. So a lot of those little babies outside, I say babies, I mean children, waiting for the bus this morning, needed those big jackets, coats, and all that. We've got the wind chills, the temperatures rather, running 10 to 20 degrees colder than this time yesterday. Wind chills still in the teens here in Metro Atlanta, and some single-digit numbers in those North Georgia mountains. I just want to show you a snapshot of the afternoon before I close here. It's cold. So we don't see the wind chill climbing above the freezing mark today. Tomorrow we will drop down to the 20s again for low temperatures. It's going to be cold on Friday morning, but it's not as windy as what we're dealing with today. So today's really the brunt of that cold. Do you want me to show you the Saturday system?
Yeah,
a little closer?
I would love to see it because
Okay.
I'm curious. Is it mostly staying to the south of us? Are all the models saying that?
That's the Sunday system. This is the Saturday system
we got to
that
talk
brings
about
us
cold
rain.
first. Yeah.
Yeah, this brings us rain and the mountains get more snow. So watch the forecast track. So sunshine tomorrow. We could actually be up around 50. So not beautiful like it was Tuesday outside, but not a bad day on Friday overall, all things considered. We get into Friday night. Here comes weather system number 1 of the weekend sliding in. That'll bring rain to the metro, but you see that little brief blue on the map in the mountains? Yep. That's that brief changeover. So that'll be early Saturday morning, more like while you're asleep Friday night. And once again, kind of like last night, yeah, there's going to be some snow falling, but because we make it to 50 on Friday, most of this will melt as it reaches the ground. It'll be those higher elevations that get a light coating, half an inch, probably above 2,000, 2,500 feet in this case. So yeah, a little bit of snow coming to the mountains, Dan, and then the question mark for Sunday.
Look at that. I'm actually going to be in Chattanooga Saturday morning, and there's a little blue there in the Signal Lookout Mountain area, so I'll send you a picture if I see anything.
Do you have snowsuits for your kids?
Oh, I got
for
in trouble.
For the dusting?
I got in trouble because I left the big jacket at school yesterday, and I heard about that when I got home.
Oh.
That's what happens when you send Dad to pick up.
I'm sure. Buckle up.
All right, Melissa. I know you got to get to a meeting, so thanks for popping in here.
Yeah, sure thing.
Good to see you. Appreciate it. All right, let's get to some other news that we're following this morning. And sadly, for the second straight day, we are starting this streaming broadcast talking about a fatal shooting involving a young teen, this one involving a 14-year-old. Let's get the latest from our Stephanie Chaynock live, or reporting rather, outside of APD headquarters.
Well, Atlanta police records show that 23-year-old Jaden Young was arrested in connection to the shooting that killed a 14-year-old boy. According to police records, investigators do believe that Young and this 14-year-old are cousins. Police say the shooting happened at an apartment complex on Greens Ferry Avenue just after 7 p.m. Wednesday. And police have said they do believe that this shooting was an accident. And while interviewing Young, he told police that he accidentally shot the teen in the back while handling a firearm. And we have requested the mugshot of Young from Atlanta Police Department. Charges include involuntary manslaughter and cruelty to children. The Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office has said that they are holding off on confirming the identity of that 14-year-old boy until they're sure his family has been notified. Here outside of APD headquarters, I'm Stephanie Chaynock, 11 Alive News.
And a little more context for you here. This is now the third teenager shot and killed this year in Atlanta. A 19-year-old was gunned down in the city's first homicide of 2026. A fellow 19-year-old was charged in that case. And then just earlier this week, you'll remember we told you about a 16-year-old who died from a gunshot wound. It turns out detectives say that was self-inflicted. And then you have last night's shooting of that 14-year-old, which at first glance appears unintentional, according to investigators. Though still following that case, we expect to learn a little more on whether any charges are going to be filed against that other young teen who was involved in that case. We are still following plenty more for you this morning here on 11 Live Plus, including the countdown on just about 50 minutes from now. Governor Brian Kemp delivering his final State of the State address, what to watch for, coming up in just a couple minutes when we're joined by our political reporter. 49 minutes from now, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp delivering his final State of the State address. It will be his 8th one. So what should we be watching for? What main topics will he hit? And what did he potentially hint at yesterday during that chamber event? I'm joined now by political reporter Zach Merchant, co-host of the Georgia Vote. Zach, great to have you. What are you going to be watching in an hour?
Dan, good morning. I'm going to be watching for a lot because unlike in a lot of prior years where a lot of, if not all, of the big priorities that we could expect to see at a State of the State address had been sort of leaked out, softening the ground going into the big speech. This year, very different. The governor's agenda for this session has been a pretty closely guarded affair. A lot of folks from strategists to members of the press to lawmakers are going to be, not that they weren't paying attention in years past, of course, but this year I think especially paying very close attention because they do not know precisely what the governor is going to be talking about in, as you put it, 48 minutes now.
Let's get a countdown clock going here like New Year's. We're going to be watching with bated breath. Any reason why he would be holding this so close to his chest?
You know, I'm always wary of taking out the crystal ball, right? But I think because we are so close to the speech, I think we can chat about some possible scenarios, right?
Okay.
And then I do want to, in a moment, touch on the few things we do know. Is just yesterday at Eggs and Issues, which
Yes.
is if you don't know, in
I love
Georgia,
that name, by the way.
And it's not just, it's an event sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce here in Atlanta, but just about every chamber in every county, every city across the state has an Eggs and Issues. Some of them, I've been to lots of them. They're interesting. Usually not as glamorous as the big main event like
At the
yesterday.
Benz.
At the Benz. But you know what? It all things are relative. Let's talk about what happened at Eggs and Issues yesterday, and then let's talk about maybe what we can expect today.
Okay.
Eggs and Issues, we saw a little bit of some priorities being floated out. The big takeaways, the governor in his kind of marquee address to this 1,000-plus person crowd of business leaders and lawmakers and policy setters, he was talking a lot about infrastructure.
Yeah.
He unveiled a plan. He's calling for about $2 billion for road infrastructure, $1.8 billion of that, which is almost the entirety of it, the lion's share. He wants to go towards highway development in Henry County. There's also a call, much smaller dollar figure, but he wanted about $50 million for an initiative to combat homelessness in the state, which is an issue I think Republicans and Democrats have talked about in one way or another, particularly since the pandemic, the challenges facing the
While
unhoused
many
population in the state
politicians
have
are
become
all
more visible and many would say exacerbated. That's what we have on the table right now, Dan. But you may be sitting here and saying, well, gee, that's probably not his whole agenda.
No, that's a couple things that no doubt he'll hint on. He teased him yesterday. But, I mean, anything else you're going to be watching for? This is his chance to kind of start to cement his legacy, too. So is he going to be balancing some of those legacy issues, tax policy and economic growth with some of the things he floated yesterday?
Let's talk about, let me give you the two buckets that a lot of the political strategists, a lot of sort of connected folks that we talk about usually point to in this conversation. And then let me introduce a third that I am thinking about that maybe isn't discussed quite as much as a wild card here. And we can do this because we're about to see the speech.
I love this.
We're not getting too far out over our skis. You talk to a lot of folks in Georgia politics, they point to one of two options. They say, there's a chance the governor plays it, you don't want to say safe, but plays it more safe than in past years, doesn't take as big of a swing on policy issues, tries to firm up the areas that he feels he's already politically strong in, burnish his legacy, but not exert too much political capital in his last year. Don't want to say ride off into the sunset, but, strengthen the strengths, don't get too into the weeds of things that could bog you down, end on what would feel like in the governor's office a high note.
Sure.
Go out the door feeling good. Bucket number two, take a big swing. You're a very popular governor in your last year in office. You have, many conservatives would say, already checked many of the big ticket items off of your list, of the kind of conservative wish list 8 years ago when the governor came in, when it comes to guns, when it comes to restricting access to abortion, when it comes to issues, some issues at least surrounding transgender kids' access to sports. A lot of these issues were hot button, tough fights in the legislature, and the governor got them all done. Democrats would look at that and they'd be very upset about that. From a Republican and conservative's perspective, they feel pretty good. So the governor may say, look, I've done all this, and I'm going to push hard again this year and show you I still have as much flex as I did in year one. Sure. Bucket number three.
The wild card?
Wild card. And it may play into a little bit of this. one of the reasons, and I don't know this at all, this is just a thought bubble I've had in the last couple of weeks. Perhaps he is keeping this and his remarks closely guarded because he wants to frame at least part of his speech today as a message to the candidates that are running to replace him and to the candidates who are running in some other marquee races, including for U.S. Senate.
Okay.
Play a role, a little bit of a party elder, and try to steer the next generation of big-time politicians in Georgia, the next state leaders, in a direction that he wants them to go. Because inside the Republican Party, the Republicans control the state of Georgia, but there are different factions of the party. There's a more President Donald Trump-aligned faction. There's a faction that is more aligned with Governor Brian Kemp. Sometimes those factions come together. Sometimes there is distance. We'll see what the governor has to say about all that
So
today.
he could be propping up his buddy Derek Dooley, who he's throwing his weight behind for U.S.
He
Senate.
could. I mean, I certainly would be shocked if he was naming politicians like that in
Sure.
his State of the State remarks.
Sure.
But can I read you a little quote here?
Please.
If you're watching along, let's do a little read along here. There was one line at the very end of the governor's eggs and issues remarks yesterday that caught my attention. And this is what he said. This is a selected part of it. He said, "We were elected to stay focused on the issues that actually matter to those we serve. For those who can think of nothing else but the upcoming election, let me share a word of advice. If you fail to listen to the people, you will fail to earn their vote." Read into that what you will, but that is certainly a message to folks on the ballot. And it seems to me that the governor was at least hinting at steer away, perhaps, from some of the most red meat issues.
Okay.
We'll see.
All right. Well, we're going to be watching, and we're going to, in fact, have you in here watching with us live at 11 a.m., and we'll get your immediate analysis afterwards. So looking forward to that, Zach. See you back here soon.
We'll see you, back here in like 40 minutes.
All
It is
right.
always an interesting day in Georgia politics.
Come on back. Go get some eggs and issues or whatever you need to do in the next 30 minutes.
We'll see you then.
We appreciate it. All right, Zach Merchant. See you soon. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and coming up in just a minute, another big day for the Affordable Care Act and a big deadline for folks who still need to sign up for that. Details straight ahead in 2 minutes. And we are back here live with you, 10:20 this morning on 11 Alive Plus. And right now, stocks are popping on Wall Street. The Dow up about 300 points as we speak, a little over half a percentage point. And it's a bit of a change from what we've seen earlier this week. We were looking at a lot of red days. The chip stocks leading the way, though. Taiwan Semiconductor delivered a big quarter last night, 35% jump in profit. So we're seeing some of those big chip stocks, NVIDIA, Micron, again, Taiwan Semiconductor, a lot of those appearing to bring stocks up, the broader market up with it this morning. Also today, it is the last day to sign up for the Affordable Care Act if you would like your health plan through the ACA. But it is getting more and more expensive for families. Those pandemic area ACA subsidies have ended. They're now gone. And that means for a lot of you we're hearing from, it means your premiums have now doubled. So this is the website you need to go to, healthcare.gov, if you're looking to sign up for the Affordable Care Act today. You have until late tonight to do it, but sign-ups down big, down more than 800,000 from last year. A lot of people positing maybe it's because folks moving on to cheaper plans or testing their luck by dropping coverage entirely, saying, hey, look, I can't afford these big monthly premiums. I'll just hope for the best and pay out of pocket if I need to. But if you cannot afford your current plan, I was looking at the AARP's website this morning, and here's what they're recommending. They say check out some lower tier plans. Also, check out to see if you qualify for Medicaid, and look into community clinics that offer free or low-cost routine health care. So there are some options out there for you if you decide that the ACA is just going to be a little too expensive for you. You know, I mentioned checking to see if you qualify for Medicaid, and that leads me into this next story because it is one of our number one trending stories right now on 11alive.com. It's about a woman from Warner Robins who has been charged with defrauding Medicaid. Her name, Elizabeth Ivester, 63 years old, from Warner Robins, defrauded Georgia Medicaid some $5 million, allegedly. According to officials, she submitted more than 77,000 fraudulent claims for durable medical equipment that was never ordered. This fraud conducted through her business, Liberty Medical, Inc. You can read about it right now on 11alive.com. We have that article pulled up for you here. By the way, this case, part of a nationwide health fraud takedown that has resulted in more than 300 individuals charged, including this woman from out of Warner Robins. Okay, now let's talk about a story that impacts all of us. It has something to do with something that is in your wallet as we speak. Talking about your driver's license. Do you have a real ID yet? Most Georgians do, but if you don't, there is a new option for you when it comes to passing through TSA security. Happy to be joined now by TSA spokesperson for Georgia, Daniel Velez. Daniel, great to see you. Looks like you're coming to us live this morning from Hartsville, Jackson. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Well, we thank you for your time. Walk me through how this process works. We're talking about a TSA confirmed ID here. What is that?
So that's the next phase of what Real ID is all about. And it's going to happen right on February 1st. If you are a passenger and you come to the travel document checker and you do not have an acceptable form of ID, you're going to have to pay a $45 fee. An acceptable form of ID can be a real ID, a U.S. passport, or any of the other acceptable forms that we have on TSA.gov.
Very good, Dana. I'm curious to know at this point, how many folks do not have a real ID? Do you have numbers on that? Is it a small number of folks at this point?
Yeah, so the good news is all across the country, 94% of passengers coming through the travel document checker do have some form of acceptable ID. It doesn't only have to be a real ID. You can have a U.S. passport or any of the other acceptable forms. But we're seeing about 94% of people coming through the travel document checker with an acceptable form of ID. So this $45 fee is going to be for that 6% of folks who are not presenting an acceptable form of ID.
Daniel, it looks to me like if there was a day to fly, this is it. Looking behind you, I mean, I haven't seen a line like that in a while. There's hardly anybody going through TSA. I mean, do you think this is going to help kind of move the line along? What's this going to mean for the security wait times?
It's not going to affect the wait times at all. So what's going to happen is if you are one of those passengers who does not have an acceptable form of ID, you are immediately removed from the line and you'll have to go over to another transportation security officer in another line. And then the folks behind you, they're going to just go right on through. So it's not going to affect security wait times for those individuals who have an acceptable form of ID. Now, the people who get pulled out to have their ID verified and have to pay the $45 fee, that could be 10 to 15 minutes, but in some cases it may take up to a half an hour.
Hey, is there an easy way to prepay this $45 fee so you can just zoom through security like everybody else?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's exactly what we want people to do. We want people to go to tsa.gov, go to the TSA Confirm ID page. There is a link to pay.gov. You can fill out all your information, pay the $45 fee, and then you bring that receipt to the travel document checker when you come through security screening.
Can you walk me through the nuance of needing a real ID? Is it only for boarding a plane at this point, or are there other reasons why you might need it?
Yeah, so a real ID is for if you want to enter the secure area of an airport, or if you want to go into some government buildings, or if you want to go into any of the nuclear facilities that we have, you have to have a real ID. So the real ID has a plethora of different things that it can be used for, not just for travel.
Daniel, is there anything I'm not asking about that you'd like to touch on this morning?
Sorry about that. No, just to remind folks that it's important that starting February 1st, if you do not have an acceptable form of ID, you go ahead and you go to tsa.gov and you get that taken care of right away.
Daniel, great to talk with you, and you're encountering some of the issues we encounter here when we run our own live shots. It's just you never know what's going to happen.
Apologize for that.
No problem at all. You know what? It's the real world. And thank you so much for bringing us this shot from the TSA line there at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson. And great speaking with you, sir, and thank you for helping us make sense of this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good day. And we're back in just a couple more minutes. More news headlines straight ahead after this. We are back with some breaking news out of Atlanta, and we do have a crew en route to a scene where we're hearing about multiple people shot. The address 400 Merritts Avenue Northeast. When we type that into Google Maps, as we are showing you here, by the way, we're just learning about this during the commercial break. It shows up as Central Park here in the Old Fourth Ward area. So Atlanta police have told us in an email in the last 2 minutes that officers are investigating a report of multiple people shot at this address, which again comes up as the Central Park area. They say that their office is en route to that call to gather more details right now. So you have the Public Information Office en route there from APD, in addition, no doubt, to officers already on scene. and we're working to gather details from our crew en route as well. We're keeping an eye on this throughout this live stream, and I will bring you more information as soon as we get it. Hopefully within the next 5 minutes or so, we'll have something else to pass along to you. This is breaking news we are following out of Fulton County. But now to DeKalb County, where you might be surprised to learn the number of people who are living in motels. Are they considered homeless? If so, why? If not, why not? I'm joined now by our senior investigative reporter, Rebecca Lindstrom, working on this important story. Rebecca, this is all based on a study that you've looked into. What did the study find?
So, I mean, going to your initial question, are they considered homeless?
Yeah.
And I think the argument that they're trying to make in this study is that absolutely yes, because these people do not have permanent housing. They are paying week to week. They don't have tenants' rights. So if something upsets the owner of the hotel, there isn't really a process to try to combat that or say, hey, no, you misunderstand. Let me tell you this. So they'll just be out on the street with, just a moment's notice. So when you start thinking about the instability involved, then they say that really is being homeless, when you're just kind of moving from place to place and all you really possess is what you can put in a couple bags and take with you should you have to move again. And so this study that was commissioned by the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners, they spent about $100,000 to do it. And it's the first of its kind for DeKalb County at least. And they went to 42 different hotels, these extended stay hotels, knocked on the doors, and then sat down with these families and individuals to survey them and just ask them,
Wow.
Tell us how you ended up here. Why are you here? What would it take for you to get into more permanent housing? And so, through all of that, what they found is that there are like 3.5 more children that are school aged living in these motels than even the school district knew about. And there are programs that can try to help provide additional transportation, educational resources if you are listed as unhoused. But if the district doesn't know, then those kids don't get access to those resources. And I think what they really found was a lot of those kids weren't even attending school because this situation was so transient. And these kids had already been in multiple schools. So, why sign them up for yet another school district
Right.
when we might only be in this hotel for a week, or we don't know where we're going to go tomorrow? And so that was one of the things I know that really touched some of the commissioners' heads and hearts and made them say, we've got to take a closer look at this and figure out what we can do.
It breaks my heart when we're hearing about the kids because you're kind of opening them up to a cycle at this point. If you grow up in the motel, are you going to be stuck to living that life, as you grow up too?
And I don't want to misspeak on the actual statistic, but I know one of the things that was discussed was the high percentage of individuals that they surveyed that had been in motels as children and were now adults.
Right.
So they just never got the job that allowed them the stability or the work life, pieces of the puzzle put together to get the stability. And since that was a fallback that they were already aware of, it was a fallback that they kind of returned to. So you do have a lot of cycle issues here going on.
Look, Rebecca, a hotel, motel, inn, whatever you want to, it is not cheap. It's got to add up if you're staying there for months on end. How does that compare to what you'd paid if you were moving into an apartment?
Absolutely. And that is one of the things that they looked at is, most of these families are kind of paying that weekly rate. And so when you add up 4 weeks into 1 month, you're paying about $1,700 to stay there. And they found that the average price for a 1-bedroom apartment in DeKalb County would be about $100 less. So if you were in a traditional apartment, could you afford the rent? I mean, theoretically, yes. Here's the challenge, though. I'm a data junkie. I love data. I think it comes along with being an
The
investigator.
numbers don't lie.
But they also say you can make numbers say whatever you want. And so that's what I love about data, though, is that you can look at it and then you can say, hey, how do I interpret this and what do I really feel like the truth is in these numbers? This survey of the respondents, most of them, the largest portion of them said, look, if we could just get assistance with that first and last month's rent or the security deposit, we'd be able to pick up the rent from there. But the context of that data after doing our own reporting, I did a series of stories on affordable housing, and one of the things that we looked at was the role of your credit score in getting into an apartment. And if you don't have a certain credit score, you know, a lot of apartment complexes just aren't even considering your application. And even some affordable housing projects that are tax funded still have a minimum credit score that isn't realistic in line with what the people who need to be able to get into those units actually have. And so, yeah, we can say, let's create some programs and give them the first and last month's rent.
Yeah.
There are some programs that actually do that. But these people are still responsible for finding the unit that's going to take them so that they can apply for the program. So I think DeKalb County and any community that really wants to tackle this issue is going to have to go a bit deeper. They're going to have to say, can we build some relationships with landlords who are willing to take the risk? Maybe we'll give a 6-month rent guarantee. Let's see if we can get this person into that unit and really show that stability so that then, you know, you as the landlord know you're not going to get burned and have someone that you're going to spend the next 2 or 3, 6 year, you know, trying to get out of the unit. And then we've got to connect them with credit recovery programs, bill recovery programs, the things that are really going to enable them to have the tools they need to take that next step and then maintain the stability going forward. So yes, financially, maybe could they afford that if they got that upfront financial assistance? Possibly, but there's going to be more involved to really making success. I'd hate for some program to exist and then we look at the data of the success rate and we say, oh, well, I guess that wasn't the solution, you know, and then we back away from it. We've got to be more holistic in the approach.
I can't imagine it's just a DeKalb County issue. I heard Senator Elizabeth Warren on CNBC just yesterday saying that nationwide we're some 3 million housing units short of where we should be. Do you think other counties are going to take DeKalb's lead here in our area and say we need to do something as well?
Atlanta has been very aggressive. I give them props. They get a lot of criticism for some of their programs, maybe because they don't reach the goals and the bars that they set, or we look at some of the funding and could it be used a little bit more efficiently, perhaps. But Atlanta really has taken a good leadership role in trying to attack this from many different angles. There's still always more work that can be done. I think we see a lot of the unhoused kind of centralized in the city of Atlanta. But I think some of our surrounding counties are also going to need to take a look at it. They call this the hidden homeless because we're not seeing them sleep on the streets.
Right.
So because they are inside a house or, you know, a hotel, we're not really thinking about their need and these bigger picture issues, and therefore we're not creating the programs or even acknowledging that they exist within our community. But I think any county, if it were to actually take a look and start knocking on those doors, is going to find more of these people living in their community than they realize.
It's an interesting debate, Rebecca, and I know it's far from over, so you'll stay on top of the county as they come up with these solutions, hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much. Great to have Rebecca on the show today. And again, we are following, in just about 21 minutes from now, Governor Brian Kemp set to speak for his final State of the State address, likely to touch on some of the affordability issues we just talked about here moments ago as well. We're keeping an eye on that address, and we will bring it to you live right here on 11 Alive Plus. In the meantime, we're back with more of the day's headlines right after this. Back with that breaking news we first told you about 10 minutes ago, Atlanta police responded to what sounds like a very serious situation, potentially multiple people shot over by Central Park in the old 4th Ward area. We have it pulled up here on a map. This is the area we're talking about. Officers right now on the scene at 400 Merritt's Avenue Northeast. So that address for us comes up as Central Park as we're giving you a little closer look at that for you. It's right off Central Park Place and just south of North Avenue. And again, in the old 4th Ward neighborhood. Not far, by the way, from downtown either. We're seeing the Fox Theater as a landmark just a couple blocks from that location. Here's what we can tell you. Atlanta police tell us that they are responding to a report of multiple people shot at that location. How many? We don't yet have a firm number. The extent of those injuries, also looking into that as we speak, because you got to think ambulances also just arriving on scene, and so is our crew. They are on the way. We also have our helicopter en route to bring you the very latest from this scene of multiple people shot on Merritt's Avenue in the city of Atlanta. More to come in just a few moments on that. In the meantime, we want to get to Senator John Ossoff. I understand he is speaking right now on a study that was recently done by the University of Georgia that found the state's economy here in Georgia projected to experience slower growth with a softer labor market. Senator Ossoff, up for re-election in November. Let's hear what the senator from Georgia has to say.
This tooth and nail. They have armies of lobbyists. They have billions of dollars and huge political power. It was not easy to stand up to the drug companies to cap the cost of insulin at $35. It was not easy to stand up to the drug companies to empower Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices for the first time. But that's what we did in that 2022 law, and Georgians are seeing the benefits of that right now.
All right, anyone else have any questions for the senator? Tyler, we can go over to you and then see if anyone else has anything.
Cool, thanks. Hey, Senator. Also curious for your thoughts on ICE. Obviously, a lot of conversation about what's going on in Minnesota right now. Curious what you're seeing there in the conversation on Capitol Hill with that, and then also your thoughts on ICE ever potentially coming to Georgia and how you would feel about that as a possibility.
Look, here's my view, Tyler. I think the American people demand and deserve secure borders. The United States must know and control who enters and exits our territory. And where there are folks who are here without authorization who commit crimes, they need to leave. I think the American people do not support and do not want masked federal agents harassing American citizens, setting up police checkpoints, going door to door, dragging Americans out of their cars and throwing them to the street, killing American citizens without full and proper investigation of the use of force by federal agents. I think that these excesses and abuses are a threat to and are undermining Americans' civil liberties. So Americans demand and deserve secure borders and public safety. Americans also demand and deserve for our civil liberties and our civil rights to be upheld and protected by federal law enforcement.
Hi, Senator.
That was Senator John Ossoff from Georgia speaking about that new UGA study out that shows that Georgia's economy, like the nation's, likely to hold steady in 2026. Okay, let's move on now to talk about the Falcons coaching search. Another morning, joined by Maria Martin from our sports team. We're just going to keep you on retainer. Thanks for being here.
Let's do it anytime.
I mean, another big morning because I saw the news overnight about John Harbaugh potentially going to the Giants. You warned us about this yesterday.
I did.
I mean, do you think this is a done deal? Should we lose hope for him here?
Yeah, I think you should, because this is all but signed on the dotted line. And this is exactly what the New York Giants had plans for all along. Maybe you should keep me on, because I've been telling you guys every single day what you should be paying attention to. And it was the New York Giants. They went full court press on John Harbaugh. They wanted credibility back in their building. This is a long standing franchise of a lot of credibility itself, but they have lost that in recent years. And so I think getting John Harbaugh back in New York really signals that they are serious about the next wave of Giants football, which is unfortunate for the Falcons. I told you it was going to be an accelerated timeline because he was the hottest name of the coaching carousel out there on the market. There are other teams out there that were thinking, we need to get him in our building. We need to possibly not let him walk out. Of course, he did walk out and then probably contemplated it for a second, and they pulled out all the stops and made sure that John's going to be there in New Jersey for a long time.
Golden handcuffs, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, what I will say about the Falcons is Arthur Blank will be able to pay whoever, whatever they want. So this is an owner who is not financially handcuffed to anything when it comes to paying the next head coach. So that really wasn't the hurdle, I think, for the Falcons. And they were the first known team to interview him. Granted, it was a virtual interview. But for John Harbaugh, it didn't matter because you talk to the Falcons, you have your options. For him, he heard what the Giants had to say. Jackson Dart, their starting quarterback, was in there probably begging him not to leave, and it all worked out for them up there in New Jersey. But for the Falcons, there are still some really good options out there.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those options. Where does the search go from here? Who do you like on the short list?
So one thing I want people to keep in mind is that even if the Falcons wanted to, they cannot hire someone today. As you and I are sitting here and talking, they can't say, hey, we want Kevin Stefanski to be our head coach. Let's hire him. And the reason for that is the NFL has compliance rules. You have to check off a couple of different things before you're able to actually hire a head coach, one of which is the Rooney Rule, in which you have to interview 2 external minority candidates before you can even hire a head coach. There's only been one so far for the Atlanta Falcons that we know of, and they have announced 6 head coaching interviews, John Harbaugh being one of them. And so once they complete the Rooney Rule, then they can start to look at these candidates and think, who is our best option here? Now, the only one in that list that would maybe accelerate the process a little bit would be Kevin Stefanski, most recently the Cleveland Browns head coach, only because he's unemployed. He can take a job at any time he wants. The same cannot be said of some of these other guys that the Falcons have interviewed because they're still in the midst of football. So I think Kevin Stefanski could be the only one to accelerate the process, but remember, they do have to complete a couple of other interviews before they can even get someone in this building.
What about Mike McDaniel from the Dolphins? An intriguing name with what he was able to do with Tua down there in Miami. I mean, is he looking at Michael Penix Jr. and saying, maybe I could fix this situation too?
Yeah, I mean, possibly. Mike McDaniel's a quirky guy. He's a lot of fun to be around for sure. And this is also coming from, I'm a Dolphins fan. Everybody knows I grew up in South Florida, and it's hard to be a Dolphins fan, I think, in recent years. But Mike McDaniel did the best he could, especially in his first couple of years down there in Miami. Turned a lot of heads, obviously. Mike McDaniel's really intriguing to this Falcons opening, mostly because he was an offensive assistant here back in 2015 and 16. And it was really the turn of Mike's career and really what pushed him ahead as an offensive assistant. So he has a lot of connections to not only the city of Atlanta, but prior coaching staffs here in Atlanta, and Matt Ryan. Matt knows Mike very well, and Matt knows all of these guys that he's interviewed very well. That's something that we've talked about here on the stream the last couple of days, is Matt's relationships within the NFL really is going to help him throughout this process. Mike McDaniel could be really intriguing. I would lean more of a Clint Kubiak before Mike McDaniel, believe it or not. There's only a couple of coaches left that have head coaching experience. Mike is one of them. It would be Mike and Kevin Stefanski that are left on that list so far, but there could be some other names here coming within the next few days. But John Harbaugh, really the only head coach that I expect to be hired within this week.
Okay.
Now, next week, I think things are going to start to ramp up even more.
All right. Kubiak, by the way, offensive coordinator for Seahawks. So they're still in it, so not much interviewing he can do.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, he has officially interviewed with the Atlanta Falcons, but they got a game coming up this weekend. And what they've done in Seattle, very interestingly enough, Dan, so Mike McDonald, who's the head coach there in Seattle, he was a part of this last coaching cycle for the Atlanta Falcons when they hired Raheem Morris. He interviewed here in Atlanta, goes to Seattle, gets them an NFC West title, gets them a franchise record of 14 wins, and everyone's thinking, okay, that could have been a very good option for Atlanta. There's a couple of coaches in that cycle that were really great, but his coordinators are being poached. Atlanta has interviewed both of their coordinators, their defensive coordinator, Aiden Dirty, and their offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak is fantastic. He's got the number one offense in the NFL. He has really transformed what they've been able to do there in Seattle, and his offense goes a lot with what Matt Ryan believes offensively and schematically. So I think that's also a name you want to really keep your eyes peeled for.
You know, we haven't even touched on the GM search. I guess it's just not as sexy on paper, but I mean, is Matt Ryan making calls on that too right now?
Yeah, Matt is making calls on all of those, and he did say that it's kind of a timing thing, and I think most of that was because of John Harbaugh. And remember, John Harbaugh really had all of the cards in his hands. It wasn't the other way around for these coaching searches for every single team in the NFL. They look at John Harbaugh and they say, well, who do you want your GM to be? Now, obviously, in New York, it's a very different situation, but for Atlanta, that was probably a very intriguing situation for John, because he's calling Arthur and Matt and saying, hey, I want a say in who the next general manager is. And they may give that leeway to whoever the next head coach is. Matt's obviously doing those interviews first. But he did say he wants to Arthur Blank said he wants to land these planes, so to speak, at the same time, general manager and head coach, as best as they can, obviously. And they want them to be similar-minded. They don't want them to be best friends. That was emphasized when Matt was introduced as president of football. But they want them to have the same ideology, the same goals for the franchise. So, yes, it's not as sexy as on paper, for sure. Yeah. And that will come in the coming days as well. And one thing as well that I want people to keep in mind is when they were interviewing Matt Ryan for the president of football job and all these other candidates, there were 5 total, including Matt, they are also knocking out those general manager interviews at the same time. So some of those guys that were up for president of football are very much in the mix for general manager. Okay. So you'll see that here in the coming weeks too. But head coach really is the one that they really want to emphasize first.
Marie Martin, thank you so much from South Florida. By the way, you guys are a college football town now.
Yeah, I don't know what we are.
How are you feeling about it?
I don't know what we are. The University of Miami actually was my first job out of college, believe it or not.
Okay.
So when they played Ole Miss, which was my alma mater, it was like my Super Bowl, literally, because it was the first place that ever gave me a job in this industry. I was very grateful for it. We are a hockey town. We're a college town. South Florida sports is having a moment, and I'm very excited because, growing up, I got made fun of a lot for being a South Florida fan.
Look at you now.
Except for when the Heat went on their run. I just want to let everyone know that was a great one.
All right, Marie Martin, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
All right, let's get back to that breaking news. We've been telling you about it all morning, well, for the last 23 minutes when we first found out about it, and our crew has just arrived on the scene. We are hearing of multiple people shot on Merritt's Avenue in Atlanta. This is in the old 4th Ward neighborhood, and APD does confirm to us the report of multiple people shot. Our crew getting in place there because we also understand the public information team from APD is there on scene gathering information. And as soon as we learn more about the number of victims, extensive injuries, and what exactly happened here around Central Park, we'll bring it to you. In the meantime, we are still watching. The governor set to speak in just about 6 minutes for his State of the State speech. We'll bring you a preview of that coming up in just a couple minutes. Back with that breaking news that we have been following for the last 25 minutes when we first heard about a shooting involving multiple people near downtown Atlanta. This is a live look from the scene on Merritt's Avenue. It's right next to Central Park. Our crew there talking with investigators, trying to gather some details. The police, by the way, also just arriving on scene not too long ago, but the Public Information Office for APD confirms to us the report of multiple people shot. There you see it on the map to the right of your screen in the old Fourth Ward neighborhood. You know, it's just a few blocks from the Fox Theater, just to give you an idea of the landmark. The Bank of America building you can see off in the distance on that live shot. So we are going to be tracking that story coming up in just about 3 minutes. Keep it here on 11 Alive Plus for a live report on midday. That is our reporter Chase Howe getting set up to bring you the very latest just a few minutes away. We are also following Governor Brian Kemp's State of the State address, his final one in office. That's also set to begin at the top of the hour, and you can watch it here on 11 Alive Plus by going down and selecting the other Plus channel. This is a live look inside the chamber right now where he is going to be addressing lawmakers. Our Zach Merchant is joining me here in the streaming center with a quick preview of what we can expect. Zach, we got 1 minute. What are some of the key things you're watching for from the governor?
The big question, does he take a big swing and aim for some huge new policy initiative that's going to take a lot of political capital to get done? Or, as you pointed out, Governor Kemp, he's in his last year as governor. Does he play it a little safer in his address and in his ask of the legislators in this chamber? And then, of course, how does this all play in to the big midterm election year that we are now in? Because even though he's not going to be on the ballot, Governor Brian Kemp's influence on these elections cannot be overstated, particularly on the Republican side of the primary contest and for Republican voters in our state.
All right, a lot to watch for, and it is coming up just about 90 seconds away. We are going to, again, be joining you here with some live analysis from Zach as we are watching the governor take to the podium in just a couple minutes. You can watch that here on 11 Alive Plus, again, by going down and selecting the other Plus channel, or you can stick with it here where you're watching as we speak, just 1 minute away, a live report coming from downtown Atlanta, the latest on a report of multiple people shot near Central Park. We'll see you here in just a few moments.
Alive News starts now.
Welcome back to 11 Alive Plus right here. We are keeping an eye on Governor Brian Kemp, set to take the podium any moment for his final State of the State address. He's been in office for 2 terms now, wrapping up his final year in office. What is he set to talk about when it comes to priorities as he lays out his plan for legislation? A lot of things to watch. I'm joined now by Zach Merchant, our political reporter, co-host of the Georgia Vote that you can watch every Sunday morning right here on 11 Alive Plus at 10 a.m. Zach, as we all follow along with this, what are some of the key things folks at home should be watching for?
Big question marks are, and we referenced this a few moments ago, but if you're just tuning in now, it's worth re-racking and talking about it again. We know we have new audience members joining us as we get ready for this speech. Does the governor, as it's his last year in office, does he take a big swing and ask the legislators to take on another big issue that will require a lot of political capital from the governor to get over the finish line? Does he play it a little safer, on the other hand, given that it's his last year, burnish his legacy, but focus more on things that are somewhat easier, more achievable goals with the hope of but getting out of this last year with a really kind of halo effect around the governor. This will be one of our first indicators of this midterm year where the governor's head is at on that sort of dichotomy.
And are you also curious to know what he might be thinking for any potential future runs for higher office and setting himself up for success in that regard?
Yes, very much so. We were talking to a political strategist who's very plugged in, Stephen Lawson, who, and you'll see me glancing over my shoulder here because I'm looking at the same live feed that you are as we look at the chamber floor here. This will be state senators and state representatives both in this joint session getting ready to hear the governor's address. But you're right. We're living. You can't separate out the politics of this year from the lawmaking. It is an enormously consequential midterm election year. Governor Kemp, of course, he's term limited. He's not running. He can't run again for governor. There was a lot of talk about whether he would enter the race for U.S. Senate, which is the other major marquee statewide race this year. Incumbent Democrat John Ossoff, he's up for re-election. Many Republicans wanted Governor Brian Kemp to enter that race and run as a Republican to challenge Senator Ossoff. The governor, of course, he opted not to do that. He put his weight instead behind Derek Dooley and is supporting Derek Dooley's candidacy in this GOP primary for Senate. Do not expect to see overt politics like endorsements or anything like that in this address. Right. This isn't the venue that you'd expect to see something like that in. But you're right that many political watchers in Georgia, even though the governor isn't on the ballot this year, they think that he has major opportunities in the future. There's another Senate election in 2028 when Senator Warnock will be up. And then some folks have said, will he launch a bid for the presidency? Those are big ifs. He hasn't said anything to that effect.
Right, but it has to make you wonder. I mean, there's only so few offices that are going to be larger than the governor's mansion.
There are, and one of the reasons, as we talk about state politics and the interplay with federal politics, many people, of course, when he decided not to run for Senate, many people said, why would he not want to do that? And some folks argued, in a lot of ways, governor, particularly being a popular governor, can be a more enjoyable job for a certain kind of mindset of person than going in the Senate. If you're the governor, you have pretty wide leeway, especially when your party controls the state apparatuses of the state house and the state senate and the governor's mansion. You can get a lot done. You're one of one.
Yeah.
You go to the Senate, you're one of 100.
Yeah, it's like going to school for 4 years versus 6 years.
Yes, it is. Let's see what's going on here.
Supreme Court, the Honorable Sarah Hawkins Warren, presiding justice of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Trenton Brown, Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, and the justices and judges of the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals respectfully await entrance to the House chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Doorkeeper. Mr. Doorkeeper, will you please allow the Honorable Nels S.D. Peterson, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Sarah Hawkins Warren, presiding justice of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Trenton Brown, Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, and the justices and judges of the Supreme Court and our Court of Appeals, respectively, to enter the House chamber. And will the messenger please escort them to their seats, please? Mr. Doorkeeper.
All right, as we wait for the governor to take the stage right there, Zach, he kind of gave a preview a little bit yesterday during the Chamber's Eggs and Issues event. Anything he said yesterday that you're going to be watching for a little more granularity?
Yeah, very much so, and I think people in this chamber are going to be watching closely for it as well. It's a joint session here, state senators, state House members, state representatives. We see members of the Georgia Supreme Court. They were just processing in here as well. In many ways, this echoes what you see every year in the State of the Union, at the federal level. the governor at his Eggs and Issues address, which is a Chamber of Commerce event here in Atlanta, it's a place for major policymakers, major newsmakers to go and make some news. And the governor did that, rolled out a request for about $2 billion in infrastructure spending. And that was the first taste of what we got to see of the governor's priorities this session. $1.8 billion he called for spending on highway improvements in the Henry County area. He also was asking for about $50 million for a homelessness, an initiative to combat homelessness. Those surely are not the only points of what he'll be talking about today from the podium, but unlike in years past, this year, the governor has not trotted out a lot of his priorities ahead of the State of the State. This year is somewhat unique in that the State of the State will be full of unknowns until he actually starts speaking.
And I guess you kind of got to know your audience. You're speaking in front of the chamber. You're going to talk on some economic issues.
Sure.
Today, you're going to have a much broader audience to speak to, the entire state of Georgia and lawmakers from both the House and the Senate here. Are there any big cultural issues you're watching this year?
You know, that's been a question that has been bandied about a lot recently. And you remember in Georgia, we've seen big debates over a lot of hot button cultural issues over the governor's tenure. Issues over access or restricting access to abortion care, the so-called heartbeat bill. There have been issues around access to firearms, the so-called constitutional carry bill. Both of these were enacted into law in Georgia. Last year we saw a lot of tussling in the state legislature over transgender student athlete access to sports. This year, at least at this early juncture, Republicans who in the past have really been in the vanguard for pushing for some of these more hot button culture war, what you might call culture war issues, they have been focused on a message of affordability, and Democrats have as well. One strategist we've talked to, they say, unlike in Washington where Republicans are a little more scattershot right now, this Republican strategist said, in Georgia, Republicans at this moment are trying to focus very clearly, very tightly on issues of affordability and the economy. Whether that will, this is an election year. Let's see how this stays.
And what happens on the federal level can no doubt trickle down the ballot come the midterms here in the state, which is why that PSC election was so important. I mean,
and let's pause there though,
sure.
Because you're right. The PSC race was a race where two Democratic challengers unseated two long-serving incumbent Republicans on this board that it does a lot of things, but its main focus is to regulate energy policy in Georgia. And the two challengers, their whole campaign message, you could boil it down to affordability. They hammered that message and very effectively flipped those two seats. Democrats, if you talk to them, they'll say, hey, we've been working on affordability. We've been here. We're glad Republicans are taking a look at this now. Republicans have a different view. You may see a thread evolve in this session of which party can capture the narrative around affordability.
That could very well be said of what happens on the national stage too this year. Affordability, huge issue for all Americans. Zach, are you seeing any kind of emerging tension between the governor's agenda, which could be laid out today? I mean, we don't have a great idea of what it's going to be, versus what the House and the Senate want to prioritize this year?
On the Republican side, and you've got to remember, Republicans control both chambers. Let's pause that now, Dan.
Of Georgia, his committee of escorts and distinguished guests await entrance to the House chamber.
Mr. Doorkeeper, please allow the governor and his committee of escort and distinguished guests access to the House chamber.
All right, Zach, so we are waiting on the governor to arrive at any moment. We were just talking about, we're going to learn more about the governor's agenda today, but what are you watching for with how that compares to what the House and Senate have already said they want to focus on? Any areas of tension there?
I think, and there we go, we can see the governor making his way. It's going to be a slow way up to the front of the room here. There's going to be there's going to be no shortage of folks who want to shake his hand in this chamber. You're right, though. We are going to want to be watching for, even though in Georgia Republicans control both the state House and the state Senate, the two chambers are not always in lockstep. And there's a long tradition, even going back to when Democrats controlled both chambers, of occasional friction between the two chambers. At this early juncture, and we're in the first week of the session this year, one of the emerging trends we're seeing is Republicans want to cut taxes. Spoiler, that's been a long, many decades of Republicans' priority. But how do you do it? In the state Senate that's led by Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, there's been more of a focus on trying to eliminate the state income tax. In the state House, led by Speaker John Burns, more of a focus on property taxes, scaling those back, a little bit of a more tepid response to the proposals to eventually zero out the state income tax. And not to say that it's a monolith either way, but which taxes get the most focus and how do they get scaled back? How do Republicans try to, at least? That'll be a theme this year.
Look, you'd be forgiven if you hear all this talk of potentially cutting the state income tax and say, I've seen this movie before. Is this as far along as we've gotten in the process? Do you know? It's been discussed many times before.
Cutting it, and it's not the lieutenant governor wants to zero it out, wants to take take it to zero, not immediately. There was a state Senate proposal just rolled out earlier this week that has a plan that would zero it out, I believe, by 2032, so a handful of years down the road now. There's certainly a lot of electoral focus on it in this big election year. Now how far that proposal actually gets. And of course, you got to remember the state House has to sign on to it too. It's a bicameral legislature. You got to do it together. That's going to be, when you see those negotiations between the state House and the state Senate, that could be where, and often is where, a lot of the compromising gets done.
By the way, 9 states currently with no state income tax. They are Alaska, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming.
And Dan, not to cut you off here, you see the governor getting up to the lectern here. He's speaking with House Speaker John Burns there. And you just saw Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. There he is now shaking hands with the Lieutenant Governor who presides over the state Senate. Governor Kemp looks like, he's talking to the Speaker there, talking to some supporters. A lot of smiles on a day like this in the legislature. Some of the more tense moments will come, of course, as the lawmaking calendar moves on here.
Members of the House and Senate, this joint session of this General Assembly will now come to order. Members, please take your seats. Our guests are all seated. Mr. Clerk, will you read a resolution?
House Resolution 997 by Representative Estration, the 104th, a resolution calling a joint session of the House of Representatives and the Senate for the purposes of hearing a message from the governor, inviting the justices of the Supreme Court and the judges of the Court of Appeals to be present at the joint session.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Welcome, everyone, to the People's House, the People's Building, our state capitol. We're here today to talk about some important issues. One main one, Georgia's future. I look forward to hearing the governor's message as well as you do. Now I get to do something that it's really special for me because I get to recognize some very special people. So let me start with, not you, the very best First Lady of any state in this country. My dear friend, a champion for so many great causes in our state, our First Lady Marty Kemp. Let's make her welcome. I'm so proud and blessed to know that First Lady. She's great. Thank you. Now, we have some other ladies that are important to the state of Georgia here. And let me see if I can get these right. Amy Porter Kemp, I got it. Lucy Kemp, Jared Fletcher, and her husband. She has a husband up there, Brooks Fletcher. So let's make them welcome too. Y'all stand. Let's make y'all welcome. You all know what I know. This first family has been supportive of their mother and father, but more importantly, supportive of the people of Georgia. Thank you, ladies, for what you've done in some tough times out supporting our neighbors across the state, your neighbors. So thank you. We're indebted to you. Thank you so much. Governor's mother is here. Ms. Cavendish, welcome. It's great to have you, and you did a great job raising this young man, and we appreciate you being here and supporting him. Thank you so much. It's a family affair today. We also have the governor's sister and her husband, Julie Reef and Rocky Reef. Will y'all stand and let us recognize you? Please stand. Thank you all for being here on this special day. Now, I'd like to recognize somebody who's pretty important to me too, Governor and Lieutenant Governor, and that's my wife, Dale Burns. Dale, would you stand? Who cares so much about literacy? Appreciate the difference you're making in people's lives. Thank you, because you made a huge difference in my life. Thank you. I also like to welcome the First Lady of the Senate, Mrs. Jan Jones. Thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting this gentleman to my left and your family. Thank you for everything you do. Please stand and let us welcome you. Some other special folks here with our Lieutenant Governor, Lieutenant Governor Jones, his former state representative. He's doing a great job at that. He did a great job. His father, Bill Jones, his sister, Natalie Tiller, and his brother-in-law, Chris. Would y'all all stand and let us recognize you all? Thank you for your service in the House, Mr. Bill. Now, it's my honor also to recognize someone very important to the workings of this chamber and to the workings of our state, along a distinguished career, and it's not over, and that's Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones. Pro Tem. A gentleman's name has a long tenure of service in our state. He's continuing that tenure of service to the people of Georgia. And that name is Larry Walker. This is Larry Walker III, the new pro tem in the Georgia Senate. Thank you for your service to Georgia and your families. Now I want to recognize some folks that are a very important part of our lives in Georgia. and those are folks that serve as our judges. I want to recognize first Chief Justice Nels S.D. Peterson for your service. Please stand and let us recognize you, Mr. Chief Justice. Very important part of that whole process, presiding Justice Sarah Hawkins Warren. Thank you for being here and letting us be in part of this day. Now, also we have the Chief Judge of the Georgia Court of Appeals, Chief Judge Trenton Brown. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our judiciary. It's certainly a very, very important part of our process as we all care about our neighbors. So thank you for your wisdom and your justice for the people of Georgia. We have a couple of constitutional officers, I think, if my eyes aren't fooling me, that are here today. And I want to start with one that's the Attorney General of our state of Georgia, Attorney General Chris Carr and his beautiful wife, Joan. Let's make them welcome. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, former House member. Our Insurance Commissioner, Commissioner John King. Welcome back to the House, Commissioner. Our number one industry in the state, our Agriculture Commissioner, Tyler Harper. And a lady is doing an outstanding job. Thank you, Governor. You did a nice job here. Labor Commissioner Barbara Rivera Holmes. Commissioner Holmes, thank you for your service. State School Superintendent Richard Woods. All right. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Wanted to make sure the mayor could find his way from down the street. Mayor Andre Dickens, a dear friend, doing a great job leading the city of Atlanta. Mayor Dickens. A gentleman who's had long and distinguished service to our country and our state. Chancellor Sonny Perdue. We're looking to build some relationships this morning, so I'm going to introduce these next two gentlemen together. From the University of Georgia, don't applaud yet, the president of the University of Georgia, President Jerry Moorhead. Hold it. And also, from the Georgia Institute of Technology, President Angel Cabrera. Thank you. I hope y'all are together. There they are, right there. We have our Public Service Commission here, and they're led by former House member, Chairman Jason Shaw, and members of the Public Service Commission, if you'll stand. The Consular Corps. I know we have a lot of good folks here. If you'll stand so we can make you welcome here to the Georgia House. Y'all may be seated. I've never said anything that received such approval. Thank y'all for welcoming all our guests and recognizing some very, very important people in the lives of Georgians. Now, I'm very honored and some misgivings as well to introduce Governor Kemp today, because this may be the last time he will be delivering this address to the people of our great state. But I can assure you that the legacy, Governor Kemp, your family, has built will last far beyond the 8 years that you will have spent serving as governor of this state. I often say this, and it's true: a story seldom told is soon forgotten. And the success story you've helped this General Assembly write for Georgia will certainly not be forgotten anytime soon. You've led with integrity, determination, and resilience through some of the most difficult times we've faced as Georgians and as a nation. When COVID struck, you put the people of Georgia first and reopened our state for business to ensure our economy remained strong, and it worked. When Hurricane Michael and Hurricane Helene swept across South Georgia, leaving behind generational damage and devastation to countless communities, farmers, families, you and your family made sure each of those Georgians knew they were not alone. Thank you. Thank you to your family. I can't thank you enough for the impact you, Marty, and the girls have had on our communities as they face some of their darkest hours. I was there and I saw it. It made a difference. But you've also led our state during its heights of achievement. You've invited opportunities for job creators and employees to put down their roots here in our state, leading our state, Georgia, to historic economic success and growth. You've enabled us to work alongside you, deliver over $9 billion in tax relief for hard-working Georgians. I want to applaud you for that. Now, whether that relief came as rate reductions, tax returns, or your suspension of the gas tax at appropriate times, you've increased access to educational opportunities, employment, and health care all over this state. You've invested in public safety, keeping our communities and our citizens safe and secure. Most of all, you've done what's best for the great state of Georgia every step of the way. And I know this session will be no different. It is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome the very best governor in the Union, the 83rd governor of this great state, Brian P. Kemp.
Thank y'all so much. Thank you very much. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Speaker Burns. Thank you for those kind words. I'll tell you all what I just told Speaker Burns, Lieutenant Governor Jones. It's been an honor serving with you. Lieutenant Governor Jones, Speaker Burns, President Pro Tem Walker, Speaker Pro Tem Jones, members of the General Assembly, my fellow constitutional officers, Mayor Dickens, members of the judiciary, members of the Consular Corps, and my fellow Georgians. As we begin a new year, there are many reasons to be optimistic about the future of our state and its people. State taxes on hardworking Georgians are low and going lower. Our rainy day fund is at a record high. Our schools are fully funded. Our infrastructure is receiving historic investments, and our state law enforcement and educators are paid more today than they were 7 years ago. Our communities are safer. Unemployment is low. More new private sector jobs are being created every day, and businesses around the country and the world know Georgia is the place to be. Our ports are busy and growing. Our kids have some of the finest technical colleges and universities in the country to choose from, and our economy is diverse and built to last. Innovation, opportunity, hard work, and a fair shot at the American dream have a home in the great state of Georgia. There is no question the state of our state is stronger, more prosperous, and safer today than it was in January of 2019. Thank you all. But also I want to be clear, this success, this good news isn't guaranteed. It doesn't happen by default or accident. There's more work to be done and more wood to chop to make sure Georgia continues to be the best place to live, work, and raise a family for generations to come. I believe that starts with continuing to address hardworking Georgians' concerns over the persistently high cost of living and everyday necessities. Since 2021, working together with this General Assembly, we have provided one-time tax relief to the tune of over $3.2 billion, property tax relief, nearly $1 billion, over $2.2 billion in motor fuel tax suspensions, and a permanent income tax savings of nearly $3.4 billion. That's almost $9.7 billion that have helped hardworking Georgians fight through the record high inflation forced upon all of us by the previous administration in D.C. and a Congress that couldn't put down the nation's credit card. These are historic investments in families, recent college graduates looking to start a career, our seniors on fixed income, and single parents just trying to make ends meet. But these investments were possible because we rejected the idea that just because government takes in more money, it shouldn't turn right around and spend it on more government. California may think that way. New York may think that way. But in Georgia, we do things differently. We keep your tax burden low. We budget conservatively and responsibly, and we ensure that state government is efficient with the dollars that you trust us with. And at the end of the day, if we have more than we need, we give it back to the people who actually earned it. As Marty, the girls, and I travel all across our state, we hear from Georgians in all walks of life, hard-working people trying to put food on the table for themselves and their families. And the reality is that too many of our citizens are still struggling to make ends meet each and every day because costs are still too high. Groceries, rent, insurance, clothes for the kids, it all adds up to more than it used to. That's why my budget proposal will include a fourth, one-time $1 billion tax rebate this year that will return or save the average filer $250 and a married couple up to $500. With this rebate, my administration and this General Assembly will have returned over $7.5 billion in surplus revenue to the taxpayers of our state over the last 4 years. We also know that one-time relief is a short-term solution that recognizes the state has collected more of your tax dollars than it needs to fund our priorities and save for whatever the future may bring. We must continue doing everything in our power to allow the hardworking men of our state to keep more of their hard-earned money in their pocket in the years to come. Because as I've said before, that's your money, not the government's. That's why my administration will also be proposing a further 20 basis point reduction in our state's personal and corporate income tax rate, bringing it down to just 4.99%. This will fulfill a promise to the people of the state that I made during my re-election campaign to lower our state income tax rate to under 5%. And with the General Assembly's passage and my signature, it will come a full 3 years ahead of schedule. This tax cut doesn't promise to pay for itself years down the road or create future budget holes with today's one-time money. Our plan fulfills my promise to the voters of this state in a responsible way. And most importantly, this plan puts all the hardworking people of our state first. The reason that we've been able to do this and do it 3 years ahead of schedule is because of our fiscal discipline. It's also worth noting a few other important accomplishments that the last few years may not have made headlines or pleased some of those that constantly advocate for bigger government. Even with the rebate and tax cuts that my office will propose this legislative session, our state's rainy day fund and strategic reserves will still stand at over $10 billion. These reserves are 4 times higher than any administration will leave behind in our history, and enough to run state government for 3 full months. But also want to provide a word of caution for the future. It's not a question if hard times will hit our state again. It is simply a question of when. When Governors Perdue and Deal were fighting alongside members of the General Assembly to pull our state through the Great Recession, billions more in state reserves would have been a critical lifeline as Georgia families, our state, and our country were experiencing incredible economic hardship. But as good leaders do, both governors made tough choices in tough times to make sure our state weathered the storm. And they both, along with the members of this legislature who serve with them, deserve our thanks and gratitude for their leadership. Fast forward to today, and Georgia stands in a historic position to confidently face whatever the future may bring. Showing fiscal restraint and continuing to build on these reserves instead of spending it all in the future may not be popular or easy. But the Georgia of today that has been built over the last 25 years does not stand on sticks made of easy or politically convenient. The Georgia of today stands on a firm foundation, a foundation built on the character of our people, the resolve of leaders both past and present, and by the grace of our Creator. So when the storms of tomorrow come, it is my hope that we will share in a commitment to keeping the state we all love on that firm foundation. Our state reserves are just one area that we have made historic strides in to set Georgia up for future success and prosperity. From the 2024 budget through the proposed amended 26 budget, $4.1 billion in capital projects have been funded through cash instead of debt. This strategic investment will save Georgia taxpayers and future state appropriators $3.3 billion in interest payments over the next 20 years. The cash funding of capital projects we began in fiscal year 2024 has allowed us to reduce outstanding debt by over 20% in just 3 years, and the ratio of our state's debt service to revenues is just 3%, the lowest since the state began issuing debt bonds in the 1970s. These savings were all made while implementing historic tax cuts, returning billions to taxpayers, and investing over $6 billion in water, sewer, and transportation projects across the state. Refusing to grow government, budgeting conservatively, and paying off debt aren't flashy. They don't get you on the cable news, make you famous on social media, or fit on a bumper sticker. And that might be the reason Washington has been so allergic to them. But I learned a long time ago building houses that it's better to be a workhorse than a show horse, because workhorses deliver results ahead of schedule, under budget, and do right by the customer. And that's exactly what we have been doing together for the people of our state. Another key investment this General Assembly and my administration has made is in our state's workforce. During my administration, we have reduced our state employee turnover rate by over 25%, all while keeping the size of our full-time state workforce at 2019 levels. We've invested in a vital workforce, saved taxpayer dollars in training and equipping new employees, and utilized innovation and technology to better deliver state services. Our state employees have done an incredible job in unprecedented times and are one of the driving forces behind Georgia's success. That is why today I'm proposing a one-time $2,000 pay supplement for all state employees, including our educators and state public safety officers. This is just another reminder, on top of the pay raises and supplements we have provided in years past, that their hard work does not go unnoticed and that we are truly thankful. Thank you all for recognizing that with your applause. These important investments, tax cuts, rebates, and record state reserves would not be possible without the drive and hard work of millions of Georgians who get up every day and do the best they can to provide for themselves and their families. They go to work chasing the American dream, hoping to earn an honest living and leave their kids and their grandkids better than they had it. That's the American spirit. That's the spirit of what it means to be a Georgian. When I launched my campaign for governor, it was about promising those hard-working Georgians that I would fight for them every day, whether they voted for me or not, regardless of their neighborhood or their zip code. Republican or Democrat, or something in between, my goal was to make a positive difference in their lives. As a small business owner and a construction guy, I believe so much good can come from an honest day's work at a job that pays a good wage. And I believe in what that job can do not only for that employee, but also for their family and that community. And that's why my administration from day one has prioritized economic development, job creation, and bringing investment to all four corners of our state. Over the last 7 years, Georgia has seen over 219,700 new jobs and more than $118 billion in investment from projects worked by the state economic development team. 64% of those jobs and 75% of those investment dollars are going to communities outside the metro Atlanta region. Since 2019, we've welcomed the 3 largest economic development projects in state history and continued Georgia's streak as the #1 state for business for an unprecedented 12 years in a row. But here in the best state for business, we don't just welcome big companies. We also champion small businesses that have a big impact on local communities. A great example of that is La Regina, an Italian food production company with a facility in Alma, Georgia. that employs 110 hardworking men and women. This facility also happens to be a former bakery that went out of business years ago. To that community of less than 4,000 people, the loss of an employer like that can be devastating. But because we prioritize economic development in rural Georgia, La Regina came in and revitalized that facility and created 110 jobs that are making a real and lasting difference, with more on the way. The impact of this small business extends far beyond Alma's borders. In addition to moving plenty of goods through the ports of Savannah, La Regina also purchases local produce from over 100 Georgia farmers, including more than 40,000 pounds of onions per week. With touch points throughout that region of our state, that one small employer produced a record 25 million jars of pasta sauce last year alone. When Marty and I went to southern Italy in 2024, we visited the headquarters of this family-owned and operated business. We talked to the men and women who have preserved their families' recipes for over 100 years, and we saw how similar their values were to the very family-owned farms and businesses here in Georgia that La Regina supports. That company, a full ocean away from our state, has the same values that we do: family, community, and a strong belief in a hard day's work. Today, we're joined by two La Regina company leaders who represent how small-town Georgia and international markets truly connect, all to the benefit of our workers. In the gallery is Emilio Rinaldi, Chief Operating Officer of La Regina, who has moved his entire family to our great state. He is joined by Jerry Lady, the plant manager and employee one for La Regina at Georgia's facility. You'll be glad to know that Jerry was the former bakery manager for the company that closed down. Will both of you please stand and let us thank you for your investment in our state. Whether the size of the Hyundai Meta plant or La Regina Food Processing Center, each project, each facility, job, or investment represents a generational opportunity for a Georgia family and their community. And one of the biggest reasons these job creators of all sizes choose Georgia is our highly skilled and reliable workforce. Over the last 7 years, we put more money toward education and workforce training programs than ever before in the history of our state. In fact, as of this current fiscal year, we have not only fully funded QBE 7 times, but added $368 million to programs and initiatives that directly prepare workers for good jobs. We've also set new precedents when it comes to school safety. Starting with the first year of my administration, we began with 3 campus security grants totaling $184.5 million, and then added $109 million into the base budget so every school system can plan for how to best keep our classrooms and all of the children in them safe. We will again fulfill that commitment in this year's budget, bringing the total amount that we have allocated to school safety during my time in office to over $511 million. Appreciate that. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. I also want to take a moment to also congratulate and thank the members of this body, both past and present, who joined my administration in achieving something that not many people thought was possible when I was sworn in as governor 7 years ago. In fact, when I pledged in 2018 to raise teacher pay by $5,000, I remember a former opponent of mine claiming I was making false promises to our educators across the state. Well, in a way, the media and the doubters were right. We didn't raise teacher pay by $5,000. We raised it by $9,500. This historic investment in our educators increased the starting salary for a Georgia teacher by almost 28%. And you don't have to get an A in math to know that that's an impressive jump. Let's again take a moment to thank all of the hardworking Georgians who lead our classrooms, pour into our students, and help keep and make our state a better place. Thank you all. In addition to K through 12, we've also made historic investments in our post-secondary education institutions and programs while reducing costs for students and families. Over the last several years, we have worked together to return the Hope Scholarship to 100% of its promise. All while the Board of Regents has held tuition costs in check across the system, so greater opportunity in Georgia can remain affordable. Contrast that with other states that have again and again raised costs of higher education, all while inflation reached 40-year highs under the prior administration. The University of California, for instance, raised tuition by roughly 19% between 2019 and the current academic year. But here in Georgia, tuition has increased by just 5% in that same period, and your partnership in eliminating the special institution fee helped us lessen the impact on those increases on hardworking families and students. In fact, data from the National Center for Educational Statistics shows that Georgia is one of the top states in the country for four-year public university affordability. All while we've kept the cost of higher education in check and college within the reach of Georgia families, we've also invested more in post-secondary education than ever before. We're now putting $2 billion additional dollars toward higher education in Georgia than when I first took office. That includes $40.7 million in this year's budget proposal alone for healthcare education facilities and medical workforce training programs. And since I first took office, we spent over $26 million for medical residency slots in our state, adding 897 positions for a grand total of 2,523 residency slots as of this fiscal year. This year, my budget proposal adds another $2.1 million to further this upward trend in such a critical workforce need. Along with these unprecedented investments, Georgia is truly the national leader in merit-based aid for higher education between the Hope Scholarship and grant programs. But in this era of high prices and new challenges for those graduating from high school, we also recognize the advantage that need-based financial assistance can give to those who would not otherwise be able to access higher education. Like their peers who have the means to attend college, these students have great dreams for rewarding careers and impactful lives, but they don't always have hope that those dreams can become a reality. Dreams without the benefit of hope remain dreams deferred, perhaps for entire generations. How much richer would the lives of those and their families be if they could attain the type of education that leads to a high-paying job with great benefits? And how much would communities across our state benefit from these young people getting a degree that opens their door or starts a rewarding career? I believe we owe it to every child to ensure they start out on a level playing field, no matter their zip code. Therefore, my amended budget proposal invests $325 million in the University System of Georgia's Dream Scholarship Program, the first need-based scholarship of its kind in Georgia history. In future years, this one-time endowment will create opportunities for generational economic advancement for thousands of students. And down the road, it will allow them to complete college and begin meaningful careers without the burden of crippling debt. The Dream Scholarship will build on the incredible, unmatched legacy of the Hope Scholarship and leave no stone unturned when it comes to student achievement in our state. From now on, throughout the country, Americans will know that hopes and dreams are alive right here in the great state of Georgia. This unprecedented initiative will also complement the Georgia Match program we launched in 2023. In just the first 2 years of Match, we've seen a 5.9% rise in USG enrollment and a 7.1% increase in TCSG enrollment. Meanwhile, other states around the country have seen decreases in public university enrollment, and 17 states are still well below pre-pandemic levels. Not only is Georgia's workforce strong and growing, we continue to outpace our competitors for at least another generation in this regard. When you consider all of these measures together, it's clear to see that our commitment to those just beginning their careers in Georgia is unwavering. But so too is our commitment to those preparing to finish their careers of valued service to the people of our state. I'm talking about the men and women who face danger on a regular basis to protect our communities. Marty, the girls, and I feel the weight and value of their service and sacrifices on a very real and personal level. We have seen firsthand the uncommon bravery they embody, and we have mourned with their families when their service has come to a tragic end. We have been reminded of countless times of just how exceptional they are for answering the call to serve, when law enforcement are under siege more than ever before. That is why today I'm proposing an enhanced retirement plan for state law enforcement officers. Under this Under this new model, the state would provide a higher match to the 401k savings accounts of eligible public safety officers through a steeper contribution schedule. Not only will the state's match increase at a higher rate, but will also raise the maximum percentage cap from 9% under the current plan to 15%. By year 10 of an officer's service to the state, 3 full years before they would reach the contribution cap under the current plan, they will already have obtained the new maximum match of 15%. When you contrast that to the current system, we're effectively doubling the state's contribution for state law enforcement. I believe this is well deserved, given the dangers that they face in today's world. But this new model will also help us better recruit and retain brave and capable public safety officers, and will put Georgia's law enforcement retirement plan well ahead of other states. Those who are post-certified, who run toward danger, who help shield even the people who try to vilify them, deserve a safe and assured retirement, and we are going to give it to them. Our commitment to law enforcement in Georgia is only matched by our unrelenting determination to go after those who operate in the evil industry of human trafficking. Thanks to the tireless efforts of the best First Lady in the country and members of the Grace Commission who are champions in this fight, you have overwhelmingly passed 10 pieces of legislation that make Georgia a safe haven for victims and a hostile place for traffickers. Those measures include the launch of the Human Trafficking Prosecution Unit within the Attorney General Chris Carr's office. Since its creation in 2019, that unit has secured more than 70 convictions and rescued and assisted over 200 children. With your help in the legislature, we have also expanded this unit with 2 new regional offices through the funding in the amended 25 and 2026 budgets. I know that our First Lady would want me to take this opportunity to thank you all for your continued support in this fight over the years, whether through legislation or budgetary actions. While we have made incredible strides in this area, and while Georgia is now the undisputed national leader in anti-human trafficking policy, we all know this fight is not over. That's why my team will introduce an 11th bill in the coming days that will further protect our children, expose abusers, and save lives by preventing the silence imposed on far too many victims. Modeled after Trey's law passed in other states, it will be just the latest reminder that no child should be a victim of such an evil act. As a mother of 3 beautiful daughters, and as someone who spent time as an assistant pre-K teacher and a middle school substitute teacher, as an unwavering supporter of those in our state's foster care system, and as a First Lady who never fails to have a smile and a hug for the children she meets throughout Georgia, Marty has truly been the perfect person to lead this cause to make sure Georgia's sons and daughters are safe. Her grace under fire, along with the work of those who have been in the trenches on this issue for decades, created a turning point in this state when it comes to identifying and stopping this crime that affects every county, yet hides in plain sight. Through our work here, though our work here is now its final year, the impact of her human trafficking efforts and that of so many others in this room and beyond will be felt for whole generations. Will you join me in thanking her and all of us, all of them who've been in that fight? Y'all didn't let me get out the part about thanking those that have been in the trenches on this issue for so long. But both Marty and I are so appreciative of all those people that are out there every single day that we never get to see fighting this good fight. So thank you for recognizing them all. Just as we have made historic progress in fighting human trafficking, we've also made monumental strides in going after violent gangs. If you'll recall, just a few short years ago, members of the Atlanta media didn't think our state faced a gang problem. They weren't listening to the sheriffs and the prosecutors who were witnessing firsthand the rise of gang-related violent crime in their local communities. But the members of this body in my administration were. In 2019, my office worked with many of you to stand up and fund the anti-gang task force within the GBI, and then later the gang prosecution unit within the Attorney General's office. Since then, the GBI has investigated over 1,800 gang-related cases and arrested close to 2,500 offenders with gang affiliation. They've also seized over $95 million in drugs and illegal items associated with those crimes. That's $95 million worth of illegal substances and dangerous weapons that are not in our schools, on our streets, or threatening our neighborhoods. Complementing the GBI's good work, the Attorney General's Gang Prosecution Unit has also investigated and prosecuted cases in 19 counties, securing over 120 convictions across the state. We're also taking the fight to gang members and other dangerous criminals on the very streets where they operate through the Crime Suppressing Unit, now in its 5th year. With the combined resources and personnel of multiple state public safety agencies, partnering with local law enforcement, the CSU has found and arrested 1,340 wanted persons, helped take dangerous drugs off our streets by arresting 557 traffickers and carriers, recovered 1,179 stolen vehicles, and apprehended 49 murder suspects. Here is a news flash to those who try to demonize our law enforcement. This is what happens when you simply let them do their job. I see Chief Sherbaum up in the gallery with the mayor. He has been a great partner in this effort. Thank you, Chief. I again want to thank the men and women working in these units for their dedication to keeping our families and our communities safe. As you all know, this is my final time speaking to you in the State of the State address as your governor. Some of you may be more happy about that than others. But I hope you know that it has been an incredible honor for Marty, the girls, and me to serve as your first family. We have done this together every step of the way, and I'd like to take a moment and ask if you join me again in recognizing Marty and the girls for their service over the last 7 years. I love y'all. Thankfully, the girls look like their mother. I'd also like to thank my mom, my sister Julie, and her family who are also here with us today. I know Speaker Burns recognized you earlier, but love you all. Thank you for your support. Today I've talked a lot about past accomplishments and some very important issues that I believe we must address in our final legislative session serving together. Don't be fooled. There's more work to be done over the next 37 legislative days. And for those of you who may think I'm a lame duck, just remember I have a big red pen. But in all seriousness, I was just thinking about what to say to my last captive legislative audience. And I was reminded of an old hymn written in 1924 called Little is Much When God is in It. The first and second verse say the following: In the harvest field now ripen, there is a work for all to do. Hark, the Master's voice is calling, to harvest calling you. Does the place you're called to labor seem so small and little known? Well, it is great if God is in it, and he will not forsake his own. In God's Word, we have so many examples of little acts of faith reaping more than one could imagine, often done by people of lesser means or lower standing in society, but filled with God's power and guided by his design. My family's service to this state will be a small footnote in the history books. Your service under the Gold Dome will likely be the same. When compared to the heroes of our faith, or everyday actions of so many heroes across our state, our service pales in comparison. Our goal as elected leaders was to do the best we could for the people who sent us here to serve in this building. We worked together to make our community safer, their dreams more achievable, their lives more prosperous, and their future a little brighter. When I put my hand on the Bible that Marty was holding in January of 2019, I didn't know what choices we would face. I didn't know what challenges would come. And while the last 7 years have seemed so big in our lives, the many decisions and the outcomes, the truth is that the budgets, the new laws, pandemics, elections, legislative debates, political arguments, at the end of the day, they're small. They're small when compared to the plan of the master builder, our Creator. But my hope, my prayer, is that God would be in those small things for our service together. Because I believe he can take whatever we have done and help build on it for the people of our state and make it great. The last verse and chorus of that hymn I mentioned says this: and when the conflict here has ended, and our race on earth is run, he will say, if you've been faithful, welcome home, my child, well done. Little is much when God is in it. Labor not for wealth or fame. There's a crown, and you can win it if you go in Jesus' name. Let's go finish the race. Like Nehemiah said, let's finish the great work we started. Thank you all. It has been an honor. May God bless you. And God continue to bless the great state of Georgia.
Governor Brian Kemp wrapping up his 8th and final State of the State address. You're watching live here on 11 Live Plus as he enters his final term as governor of Georgia, final year of his final term, I should say. He told the crowd of legislators he's not a lame duck. He's ready to get down to business, and he laid out a packed agenda for his final year. Our Zach Merchant is here, and Zach, we knew that he would touch on affordability, but it certainly seemed to be much of the overarching theme for more than half that speech. What are your main takeaways?
A very economic, a very pocketbook-focused address. His last address, as the governor himself acknowledged, to what he called a captive audience of the state legislature. You've got state representatives, state senators in there, ticking off just a few of the big items that the governor proposed. Tax rebate, lowering the state personal and business income tax. He also touted a proposal for a $2,000 pay supplement to all state employees, and he emphasized that that would, of course, include state law enforcement and state educators, teachers as well. He also rolled out a proposal of a more than $300 million need-based scholarship to the University of Georgia system schools. Obviously, there's the Hope Scholarship already in place. That's a performance-based one.
Right.
The governor proposing more than $300 million need-based scholarship now as well. A lot of pocketbook issues here.
Yeah, I mean, affordability for just about everybody, workers, the college students, the public servants. I mean, sounds like a good day if you're in Georgia State Patrol, for example. You're going to get that $2,000 pay supplement he's proposing. But then also we heard more about raising the 401k match for them.
Yeah, we did. And that, again, in some ways, obviously this was a focus on affordability, pocketbook issues like we're talking about. Overlaying all of this was the concept of legacy. This is the governor's last address, last State of the State address. Part of his focus throughout his tenure in office has been on public safety. He laying out a proposal to boost the retirement benefits of state law enforcement officers. While we did not know that was coming, as we listened in, it certainly comes as no surprise. Public safety has been a focus of his, and the governor noted by boosting their pay, boosting their benefits, he believes that will help recruit and retain law enforcement officers, which in years past, not quite as much a lot of law enforcement leaders right now would say, but certainly in recent years past, has been a real challenge for many law enforcement organizations across the state and across the country. You see that public safety emphasis coming out through that proposal in his speech as well.
Yeah, he touted some of the work from the anti-gang task force. He gave a shout out to Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum, who was there in the audience. And just to put this in perspective for you, back in 2020, a year after he would have taken the oath of office, the city of Atlanta was experiencing a sharp increase in homicides, almost 160 that year. And then you fast forward here, 2025, they just ended with fewer than 100. So, look, there's been a big drop in crime, not just statewide here in the city, but also we're kind of seeing that trend nationwide as well. Zach, what are we going to hear from Democrats today? How do you think they are going to respond to the governor's speech?
We will be hearing a Democratic response to the State of the State in short order later today. But leading into the speech, and I want to pull this up, the Democratic Party of Georgia sent out what might be called a preemptive response. We just listened in for the better part of 45 minutes to the governor here. We should read a little bit right now, and they can read the full thing in a bit. But here's the final paragraph of the Democratic Party of Georgia's preemptive. It's not the formal response, but it is a response from the party. Here's what they said. This is a quote from the Democratic Party of Georgia. Georgians are sick and tired of failed Republican leadership, and that's exactly why they showed up at the ballot box time and again last year to throw Republicans out of office. This November, Georgia voters will once again say enough to failed Republican leadership and elect a strong Democratic governor who will fight every day for them and their families. That was the Democratic Party of Georgia leader, the chairman, Charlie Bailey, giving a preemptive response.
Okay.
Obviously, the Democratic Party of Georgia, that's going to, by nature, going to take on a political tone there. And there are stark differences between the Democratic Party's views in Georgia and the Republican Party's views. We'll hear more, we should hear more from the House Minority Leader, Carolyn Hughley, in a more formal response later today.
I'll be interested to hear from Ms. Hughley what exactly the governor said that they're going to push back on. I mean, after speaking with lawmakers leading up to the start of this important session, do you get a sense of anything the governor laid out there today that Democrats are going to immediately try to block, knowing, however, that they are in the minority in the House and the Senate?
Candidly, with such a focus on a lot of these affordability issues, which has been the buzzword going into this session, I wouldn't want to hazard a guess as to any of the things that he's trotted out today as proposals that will be real flashpoints in Democratic opposition. One thing that was worth noting here, the governor, in talking about the state reserves, it's often referred to as the rainy day fund. We have many billions of dollars sitting in state reserve funds. Some lawmakers, some candidates for office, some Democratic candidates for office have talked about dipping into those state reserves for certain policy initiatives. They've proposed that. The governor today. He said a word of caution is how he phrased it against dipping too much into that state rainy day fund. That has always been a bit of a topic of conversation under the Gold Dome. How much do you use? How much do you leave set away? The governor in his address said it's not a question of if the hard times, the hard economic times will come.
Right.
It's a matter of when. He, not so subtly, pushing for lawmakers to temper their hopes of trying to tap too much into those reserves. Others, particularly some Democrats, have different perspectives on that.
And then after mentioning that, he immediately mentions that they plan to lower the income tax rate to under 5%, and that's actually going to be a few years ahead of schedule. So was that anticipated, Zach, or was that a bit of a surprise today?
You know, and if folks have been listening along on our 11 Live Plus stream for a while now, we teed this up a little bit, and we talked about what may be some of the themes of the speech, and under the Gold Dome, Republicans control both chambers. There's going to be an emphasis on cutting, on reducing taxes. Where does it come from, and what does it look like is going to be the big conversation. Some in the House are more focused on reducing property tax. Some in the Senate, particularly the Senate leader, Republican Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who is a candidate for governor himself, has called on eliminating the state income tax altogether. The governor not directly addressing either of those proposals. Instead, what he proposed was a reduction in the income tax.
Okay.
Not eliminating it, but reducing it. A little bit of a middle road there, at least in this proposal. We'll see where it all shakes out.
Look, unless I missed it, it was a 40-minute speech, so I was trying to hang on to every word. But did he talk at all about the infrastructure and transportation plans that he laid out yesterday during the Eggs and Issues segment at the chamber?
I did not, and again, I did not hear anything to that effect.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And part of the way the early season table setting speech-making events are set on the calendar is that you do have multiple opportunities to focus on different issues. You're at the event before the chamber yesterday. The governor talks about these highway infrastructure proposals. Today,
what are you going to do for me as Georgia?
And that's, not to say that one dovetails better into the other, but it just gives a lawmaker, a state leader, multiple venues and multiple opportunities to deliver their message. One thing that we should point out here as well, and it was a line that got some applause and some wry smiles, and I think some chuckles. I saw some of the speaker and the lieutenant governor giving kind of wry smiles and laughing along, but it wasn't really a joke. The governor said, this was what he said. He said, for those who might think that I am a lame duck, just remember, I have a big red pen.
Yes.
A laugh line, but also a subtle and maybe not so subtle reminder that he still very much is a powerful figure in state politics. He has the power of the veto, and he is a seriously influential and popular member of the Republican Party in Georgia. He's a very popular governor.
Little wink and a nod there to some folks in the audience.
Yes, very much so. And I do not think that anybody missed the implications there.
All right, look, before this speech started, you said he could go really one of the two routes here. He could swing big with a big issue, or maybe he could play it a little safer. After hearing the speech, how do you think it's going to be this year?
I think, like we talked about earlier, this felt like a speech that leaned into the strengths, leaned into what he views as his strengths. It talked a lot about his legacy. You saw him referencing First Lady Marty Kemp, Marty and the girls,
right,
his daughters, an oft-used refrain you hear from the governor talking about his family, thanking them for kind of going along on the ride that they've all been on in these 7 years in the governor's office. The governor, from the policy proposal perspective, leaned into these pocketbook issues. He did not talk about, essentially at all in this speech, some of the what you might call culture war issues,
right?
The issues that tend to ignite the most intense passions and ignite the most conflict and confrontation and division under the Gold Dome. He steered wide away from those.
Abortion, firearms, transgender rights.
Didn't hear about those here.
Right.
And I think, again, past often is prologue, but not always. The fact that he leaned so much into the pocketbook issues here, I think indicates that he's going to focus on that and maybe steer a little clearer of the culture issues, in part because under his leadership, the state has addressed and accomplished a lot of conservative goals on those fronts already.
Off to the right of your screen, you see our reporter Doug Richards there. They are getting set up, getting the camera shot white balance for you, so everything's looking good, because very soon, as Zach mentioned, we are awaiting a Democratic response here. And let's go ahead and listen in just a moment as we are anticipating to hear an immediate rebuttal from the Democrats after a 40-minute speech from Governor Brian Kemp laying out his plans for his final year in office as governor. Zach, real quick, anything you're watching for as we wait to listen to the Democrats?
I think we should be paying close attention to how much do electoral politics factor into this response? How much do policy responses factor in? What's the balance there? Is this more of a campaign speech? Is it more of a policy proposal? How does that balance get threaded here? And you see on the left, that's Minority Leader, State Representative Carolyn Hughley. On the right, that's Sam Park, two leaders in the Democratic caucus here. Looks like we're getting ready in just a moment. Let's listen in now.
Because we've been asking for need-based scholarships for years. And as you know, HOPE started out as a need-based proposition, and they turned it into a merit-based scholarship. So I'm happy that on his way out the door, he's given a nod to something that we've been asking for several years.
Do you support the governor using a good portion of the state's surplus to return some of that to taxpayers?
This is what we need to think about. We need to really, really look at what we're doing. He says $250 or $500. Of course, that will not take care of the needs that most families are thinking about. They're thinking about child care. They're thinking about paying rent. But a one-time $250 and a one-time $500, what is that really going to do? Of course, we want to be as supportive as possible in this last year, but we really got to think about long-term, how are we going to continue to make Georgia a strong state? The governor's going home, but the legislature has to come back.
Was there anything you overlooked?
Did you hear anything about health care? We have been talking about expanding Medicaid year after year. And we know that the ACA subsidies have expired. There are cuts to Medicaid coming down to us from the federal government. That's a real challenge. And I'm surprised that it was not mentioned.
Do you support the accelerated income tax fund? You announced it's going to go to 4.99 years earlier than expected.
Well, you know, the devil's always in the details. So we're open and we're going to look at that, but I'm not ready to sign on at this moment.
When the governor talks about health care, he usually talks about Georgia pathways. He didn't mention it today either. Any interpretation that you might put on that?
Well, the governor was talking about his successes today, and Georgia pathways cannot be counted in success. All right. Thank y'all.
Good job, Sam.
All right, you just heard from House Minority Leader Carolyn Hughley there. She's the Democratic state representative. She leads the Democratic caucus in the state House. That was a response to Governor Brian Kemp's State of the State address. It's not the formal one, but a quick, somewhat impromptu press gaggle there to get a quick first reaction. Dan, one of the big standout topics there, you heard one of the reporters ask a question about healthcare, about Governor Kemp's State of the State address, and Representative Hughley, Leader Hughley, quickly said, "Did you hear anything about healthcare? Did you hear anything about the Affordable Care Act subsidies?" A strong indicator that that is going to be a major focus of Democrats in the Democratic caucus under the Gold Dome going into the session.
Well, timely enough, because today is actually the deadline to apply for the Affordable Care Act if you want your coverage to begin on February 1st. And Zach, we're hearing from a lot of people who this year just quite frankly say we can't afford it. And a lot of people choosing to go without insurance, just rolling the dice to see how things go for them. So you see not just nationwide, but perhaps here in Georgia, that's going to be a big sticking point.
Yeah, and you are very correct to allude to it, not just nationwide, because this was a nationwide, it is still a nationwide conversation that's happening. Extending or not extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies, as you'll remember, was eventually the key sticking point of the record-setting government shutdown we saw last year. You see this ongoing focus the state level here as well on issues of healthcare. And when you talk to Democrats, they often tie the two together, affordability and healthcare. They see it as, in many ways, two interlocking components of living an affordable and a good life. We, as part of the Georgia Votes pre-legislative session show from the Gold Dome last weekend, we interviewed the majority and minority leaders from the state House and the state Senate. That, of course, included Leader Hughley, and she very much talked about those two issues as being, in a lot of ways, part and parcel of the same overall goals.
Yeah. You know, also during that speech, we heard a couple shout outs to Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. You know, he did not have a
Governor
far
Kemp's address.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And he did not have a far walk to get to the Capitol. Right across the street, you have Atlanta City Hall.
He's got good parking there.
Good parking. I mean, there's certainly a lot of overlap between those two. What kind of relationship does Governor Kemp have with Mayor Dickens, and how did we see that unfold before our eyes today?
As we were watching, we both remarked on this, and I'm sure folks who are watching along did as well. It is notable that in a state capital that is controlled by Republicans, that is situated in the city of Atlanta, a city whose government is dominated by Democrats, when the mayor, Andre Dickens of Atlanta, was referenced, big round of applause from the legislature. You saw Republicans and Democrats applauding. Same with Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum.
Right.
Big round of applause. Many people will say that during Mayor Dickens's term, and now he's into his second term now in office, the relationship between the state capitol and City Hall, the relationship between the governor's mansion and City Hall, has grown closer. They certainly have, Andre Dickens and Governor Brian Kemp, they have very different views on a lot of policy issues, but many strategists, many folks we talk to who are in a position to know these things, they often point to there's a productive working relationship between City Hall, the governor's mansion, and the Capitol.
All right, so what happens next as we look ahead to the next 37 days or so? What are some of the big things on your radar, Zach? And for folks watching at home saying, all right, what does this just mean for me and my bottom line? What should they be watching for?
How much of this gets done?
Yeah.
Today is all about proposals from the governor. Most of this week is all about introducing legislation, introducing bills. If you're a lawmaker, you're floating your ideas. How much of this turns into law is really the big question. That's where rubber meets the road. It's cheap to have ideas, and not saying anyone did anything cheap here, but we've seen lots of lawmakers, lots of legislators speaking at all sorts of events all week long. Today's the big marquee event. But having the idea and proposing it, that's step one. Then you've got to carry these ideas through a legislature that's in the middle of an election year where many lawmakers themselves are up for election, all of them who want to keep their jobs. They've got to at least win re-election to stay. Many of them are running for higher office. A lot of state senators running for lieutenant governor or attorney general. You got folks running for secretary of state. You got folks running for insurance commissioner. You got the leader of the state senate running for governor. So you've got to navigate this ocean of politics and still carry your bill safely through all that to get it done. So if you're a Georgian who watched this and heard some things, you go, oh, this is something that appealed to you, I think it is an impartial, nonpartisan thing to say. Keep paying attention to it through the course that it tracks through the legislature, because there's a long road to go to get any of these things done.
All right, look, he's the co-host of the Georgia Vote. It airs here on 11 Alive Plus at 11 a.m. every Sunday. Have you finalized the guest list for this weekend? Do you know what you'll be talking about?
We will. Well, we'll certainly be talking about what happened today. We'll also be keeping a close eye on the Democrats' continued response to the State of the State address today. That should be coming up at about 2 o'clock this afternoon with House Minority Leader Carolyn Hughley. We saw what you might call a little bit of an early snippet, an early teaser of that in that quick press conference we saw just a few moments ago here on 11 Alive Plus. And then this weekend, as we just talked about, there's an election coming up. We hear from two leading candidates for governor. On the Republican side, Attorney General Chris Carr, who was in the audience at the State of the State. You saw him up in one of the gallery boxes there. And then Democratic candidate for governor, Jeff Duncan, who, if folks have been in Georgia for some time, they would remember.
Wasn't always a Democrat.
No, he was not. He was not always a Democrat. He served as the Republican lieutenant governor under Governor Brian Kemp for some time. So if you saw that kind of wide three shot of the lectern there with Governor Kemp in the middle You saw Speaker John Burns, who's the Speaker of the House on one side. Today you saw Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones on the other. Not so long ago, Jeff Duncan, who's now running as a Democrat for governor, sat in that seat, that lieutenant governor's seat, as a Republican.
You know, I was talking about the Falcons with Maria Martin yesterday, and she said, I don't need to watch reality TV because the coaching search is my reality TV. I think you could say the same for Georgia politics, my friend.
You know, I think for folks who are on the outside of it, very much so. I think if you ask the candidates and the strategists, they would say it is business time now that we are into this new year. And, you know, at the risk of being a little trite, but I think it is true, everywhere you go in the country, people say your vote matters, and it absolutely does. Full stop. If you live in Georgia, your vote really matters. Our elections are close. Our elections have a history of defying expectations and bucking polls, and folks not voting straight ticket, people saying, I support this candidate for this office, and this other candidate from another party for that office. Yep. People do their homework here, and that means that when you go to cast that ballot, you have a real obligation and a responsibility to follow this, whether it's a reality show or drama or documentary, whatever you want to call it, these many months going up to Election Day. You've got a lot to track, and Georgians have shown again and again they do it in a smart way.
Yeah, smart voters, no doubt. Zach, thank you so much for all your help today.
Thanks, Dan.
And we thank you for joining us here on 11 Alive Plus. The news continues right now, but for those watching on YouTube, we appreciate your viewership. And be sure to download the 11 Alive Plus so you don't miss great conversations like this each and every day coming to you from our streaming center. Have a great day, everybody.